But those years, those 16 years were, he won 247 games, which back then they only played 20 to 22 games. So that was 15 wins a season or so, average.
Of course, his players are still in a community where they get together on a regular basis.
They still have a McBrayer reunion every summer, so that they were a special group. So that era, that particular coaching era was probably our best. We've had several good coaches and a team here and there that have had success, but the 72 team I mentioned with Guy Strong was a really good team. We went to Knoxville, Tennessee we won the OVC and went down there and played in the regional, and we played Florida State, and they had the three kids from Kentucky, Otto Petty and Ron King and Larry Gay, that were in their starting lineup. And with 11 seconds to go, it's 82-81 Florida State. And Darrell Dunnigan is on the free throw line for a 1-and-1. So it was possible that we could have pulled the big upset.
And they finished as national. That was right in the middle of that long string of UCLA championships. Mm-hmm. But Florida State finished second to UCLA that year and extended them pretty well. It was
like a 6-point game in the finals, so they went ahead and played really well after they beat us.
Yeah.
So that was a special Eastern team. And then the 79 team, we got kind of a rough or a tough break. We won the OVC in the big famous 3.5-second game, and then we drew Tennessee, and we went to Murfreesboro. I remember this just like it was yesterday, and of course Middle Tennessee was in our conference, so we felt, some of those folks are going to be for Eastern, and we'll have our own crowd down there. But they came on the floor, and they must have passed out orange shakers. There's 10,500 orange shakers, and we had our group of maybe 1,000, and it was really intimidating. And we didn't play all that well. Turk Tillman had an off game. I think he had 16 points, and they beat us by 14, I think. But that was a really good team. And then the two recent teams with Travis Ford in '05 going through the tournament and winning. I think he won 8 games in a row down through the end, and giving Kentucky such a good game at the RCA Dome in Indianapolis before losing. I think we lost by 8, but we cut that game to 5 points, and we had a shot, 3-pointer that would have cut it to 2 that we missed. So they knew that they were in a game, so that was good. And then Jeff Neubauer, just a couple of years ago, played North Carolina down at Wake Forest in the NCAA tournament, and that was quite a good team.
For those who don't remember this, tell us a little about the 3.5-second game. What?
3.5-second game. Alumni Coliseum was packed to start off with. It was the championship game. Western was ahead by 1 point. I think there's 16 seconds left, and we had the ball. So we're working, of course, for the last shot. And Kenny Elliott, I'm pretty certain, shot the shot around the free throw line and missed with around 6 seconds to go. And the ball was batted around, and 3 or 4 people were trying to tip it up and shoot again and all that.
The noise is deafening while all this is going on.
And our clock was the original clock. It was built in, 63 with 62 or 3, and so it was a fairly old clock, and the horn, I guess is what I was referring to, but nobody heard the horn. I didn't hear it, and they call a foul, and they look up the clock, and it's 0-0-0. So they come over the scorers table and huddle, and then they go out at mid-court and huddle. And by this time, Gene Cady's the head coach at Western, and he's taking his team off the floor, trying to put the pressure on them to say the game's over. But they come back scorers table, and they called a foul on the Western. It was going to stand, Western team. They picked Dave Tierney, who was a reserve player. He's from Louisville Trinity High School. And I remember I looked his free throw percentage up real quick, and I remember it to this day as 62.5, which college basketball is not all that great. Because he didn't have a lot of chance. He even missed one, and he might not have one for 3 games. So we're happy that we're shooting, but not particularly happy that Dave is the one, because he hasn't played enough to really get the game experience. But sure enough, it's on the end, the wall end, and he hits the first one, and everybody feels good because at least we've got the overtime. And then, sure enough, he hits the second shot, and that's it.
Yeah.
Then, oddly enough, the next year, they get to host the tournament. They finished first, and we were maybe third or fourth, and we end up playing them in the first round. And the exact same thing happens. It comes down to the last shot, and there's a foul called, and they look up, and the Western clock keeper, the scorekeeper, they're all over there. It's over. It's over. Don't even come over here. And they didn't review it or talk about it. And I think Coach Byer figured that one time we're not going to win that battle.
Lightning's not going to strike twice.
Yeah.
Why do you think, Karl, that EKU track and field has been so successful over the years?
We have two great coaches, Rick Erdman and Tim Moore, and they do an excellent job recruiting and being able to go to the meets, and they have so many contacts and recognize some talent that perhaps the other schools are overlooking. It's kind of like Roy Kidd. He was an expert in looking at people or athletes and just on the spot, just knowing that he could plug him in an offensive line or linebacker or one of the skill positions. But they've got a real knack of being able to do that. And Rick took over, Rick Erdman and Tim Moore, the two I'm talking about. Tim's the assistant and Rick's the head coach. But Rick took over in 1980, and he's won countless. He's 57-time OVC Coach of the Year in one of the 6 sports that they're involved with. So they have some overseas ties too. We've had quite a few runners from Africa that have come over in cross country and track too, but haven't been successful. But they're just special coaches, I think.
And I've always thought, Karl, that they focused on being, rather than trying to spread it out across all the events, they have focused on strength in the distance and in the sprints, where you could build relay teams.
Yeah, that's right.
And
we're just about out of time, Karl. Just say a little bit more about what you're doing now with the EKU Sports Hall of Fame, and what's that been like?
Well, Mark, Sandy, and Simon, we talked last fall during football that they thought that they had perhaps a part-time position that I could fill and help out with, and we talked, and naturally I was ready to come back to Eastern in some capacity, and I'm mainly working at this point with 100 years of football celebration and 100 years of basketball celebration. We've done quite a bit already with the basketball. We've not really announced anything, but it's going to be close to the amount of things that are on the website, and we've got a lot of things planned for basketball. But we're right in the middle of the football celebration. We've got an all-century team that will be announced shortly in next week or two. Then we've got the Hall of Fame banquet. You can go online and see video and hear audio clips of some of our great moments. And daily we have this date in Colonel football history where it changes every day of a big game that we won on that particular day. And it's got all kinds of stats and records of the past. And it's been a real chore, a good chore to go back in there.
You must be enjoying every minute of it.
It's exactly what it was. Again, it's probably meant for me to help out with that. I remember quite a bit of it, and then some of the great teams.
You don't go back quite 100 years.
Yeah, no, not quite. But I remember some of those teams with Coach Presnell, and of course with Coach Kidd, every team that he's had. So in football, and then we've had so many good basketball teams through the years. It's been a real treat.
Well, thank you, Karl, and thank you, Doug. We've been talking with Doug Whitlock and Karl Park about EKU athletics for almost 100 years. Feels like we've been around almost that long, doesn't it?
Karl, I'd gather have.
That's right.
You add our years with Eastern athletics up, we get close to 100.
Yeah, that's right. So please join us again on our next EKU Then and Now.